Hi, I'm Don Janice, and on this episode of Authentic Living, I interview Lisa Taylor with This Choice Matters. Lisa learned at a very young age, 3 years old, about her own spirituality mixed with science and how that actually became an intuition that she can trust throughout her whole life. She really believes that we can experience anything we want in this life, but first, we must believe. Here is Lisa Taylor with This Choice Matters. Welcome, everybody. My name is Dawn Janice, and this is Authentic Living, my new podcast. And I'm really excited today to have Lisa Taylor here with us. Lisa Taylor is a thought leader, and she is the CEO of This Choice Matters. Welcome, Lisa.
Hi, nice to be here.
So good to have you here. So I would love for my audience that's listening here on the podcast app and or YouTube and or Facebook to hear about your background because it's pretty impressive. I've got it in front of me, but I'd love it.
Oh,
Love to hear you talk about it.
well, right out of college, I worked, that's actually a story, the first job, how I got into broadcasting. But I got very quickly out of college, I got into broadcasting. I started as a PA and worked my way up and ended up being a producer and anchor for radio and TV in news predominantly, and worked for the Christian Science Monitor, which, if you're working in news, working for a Pulitzer Prize winning newspaper and news organization is like kid working in a candy shop. I mean, it was just like that's the highest standard you could find in news, and I mean, it still is. So that was amazing. And I went from there to working in film and television on sort of the dramatic side for a little bit, and then started a family and had a tutoring business in education, and then went from there into and did always kind of did film stuff on the side, and from there went into communications for a school in education, and then started my own company. So it's been a ride, and what's really interesting is like all the threads of all the challenges and all the talents and skills that were brought to the fore, they've all woven together into this current adventure. And the golden thread through all of it from when I was a little kid has been my spiritual walk. That really is the one consistent thread through everything. Because as a really young child, I just was really interested in finding out about God. I used to have visions and dreams as a kid. And I remember when I was like 3 years old, and I remember it was like three because I was looking up at the doorknob. And we'd just come home from Sunday school, I think, and I said, Mommy, if God is everywhere, we just learned that God is everywhere. If God is everywhere, is God in that doorknob? And I'm looking up at the like brass doorknob of the front door. And then I look over at the closet door, a wooden doorknob on the closet. Is God in that doorknob? And I honestly don't remember what my mom said. I'm sure she tried to explain it to a 3-year-old, but that was kind of where my head was. And I just had really interesting experiences as a kid around spirituality. I remember this one time sitting in a chair when we used to sit like right in front of the television. It was like a foot away. I'm sure it was emitting all sorts of horrible things. But anyway, was sitting right in front of this television in this chair, and I was by myself. I don't know, watching cartoons or something. I don't know. And I remember feeling a hand holding my hand and feeling like it was an angel or it was God, or I didn't know at the time. I think I was like 5. But I remember, and I can, like, I think about it, I get chills because I actually, like, I remember the feeling of my hand being held. So, like, stuff like that when I was little. So when I became sort of aware of studying more about spirituality and learning more about God, and, growing up in Sunday school, you get that. But it was always a very big focus in my life. And I grew up with prayer as kind of the healing modality that we followed, because my dad's dad was a surgeon and my mom's mom was a very spiritually minded person. And so the two of them, having 3 kids, I was the youngest, they had to kind of decide, like, what are we doing for healing? So my dad, a lot of respect for what he'd seen in the practice, and he said, well, all right, you have 3 days. If they're not healed in 3 days, I'm taking them to the doctor. It's like, oh, that seemed fair. He goes, he said something like, if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for them. Like, I think referencing the resurrection.
Ah,
So, yeah, so I was always healed. I was always healed in 3 days. So that was kind of my walk. And I've followed that through all of my different careers. Healing spiritually has been kind of the through line. So that's really where my focus is now.
I love the visual of the gold thread.
Oh, yeah.
It's very symbolic of spirituality. It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful visual for me, and it's a fantastic. Fun fact: I have a little bit of background in media as well. I was on the sales end of it though, so I wasn't the talent as you have been the
Were
talent.
you in TV or radio? Where were you?
Yes, and yes, and yes, and
Yes,
film.
and yes, and film and everything, like all
Yeah.
the stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, just move around in the industry, I think. And it's interesting that both of our paths have led us here together for this interview.
Yeah.
So beautiful. So 3 days, if it's good enough for Jesus, it's good enough for us.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mic
And
drop.
never went to a doctor. I mean, except for like the annual checkup for school or something, but I never needed to. I had a skiing accident when I was my parents got divorced when I was 8. So I was kind of on my own a lot, and my dad would take us on these trips. So this one time my dad took me by myself on the skiing trip. It was I grew up skiing. New England, so always a lot of ice. Um but I was kind of a little hot dogger. I was like 11 maybe, and I was skiing with my dad, and I was like, zipping down the trail, and then I look up, like waiting for my dad. I'm kind of looking for his silhouette coming down. The sun is shining, and this guy comes off this mogul, like screaming out of control, and smashes, like we're tumbling. His ski went right into my shin, so
Oh,
I stopped his momentum with my little shin. That was fun. Went down in the toboggan, the first aid toboggan guys, and they said I'd broken my leg, but oh, somebody earlier today has broken their leg. So we don't have a splint for you, but we'll create one out of this cardboard box.
wow.
And it'll take 45 minutes for the ambulance to get here, but dad, if you want to take her, and my dad has like a little Alfa Romeo, right? So dad's like, yeah. Like, he put me in the little Alfa. I'm like, bouncing down. Anyway, so it was one of my first opportunities to really pray through something utilizing kind of spiritual science and spiritual law in a very real situation. And saw the x-rays, the doctor comes over, and my dad, of course, being the surgeon's son, it's like, yeah, like, they're pointing out stuff. It's like, yes, it's fractured, it's a hairline fracture, she's got to stay off it for 6 weeks, the skiing season is over, blah blah blah. And I just refused. I refused to go there. And they always put you in a wheelchair and wheel you around. So they wheel me to the door to leave the hospital, and they're handing me crutches with this thing. And I got up and I walked to the car. And they're like, no, no, you can't do that. It's like and I just there's a lot behind all of that, but I was utilizing spiritual science and just following the law of good, the law of God, and had a healing. I challenged a little bit that night, and then by the next day was completely healed and skied. So
Wow.
that was when I was like 11, I think. I was pretty young. But when you have experiences like that, and you know the efficacy of this way of thinking and being, and you can live by it. It's not just this sort of thing off in the corner that you grab when you're in trauma. It was like, this is just a way of living, a way of being. I mean, Einstein said, when you look around and see, the illusion that we're seeing, he said, it's an illusion, albeit a very persistent one. It's still an illusion. And now quantum physics is kind of catching up with the fact that it's all consciousness and there is no matter. And the stuff that feels so substantial is just thought. So when you know that, I mean, if you're biblical at all, and even if you're not, if you just look at it as kind of a book of sort of science, Jesus demonstrated his dominion over all of the things that look like material laws. The law of birth, law of death, law of gravity, laws of time and space. I mean, all the other like societal laws and religious laws and all. He blasted through all that stuff. Like he elevated women in that time when women had absolutely no rights. He was elevating women. It's like he walked in his own path. And a lot of the prophets and people that we've seen, and there was another woman in the 1800s who did the same thing, who wrote this book, Science and Health, that I've grown up with and study the science from. And it's a really powerful book.
Interesting. I'm gonna have to pick that up.
Yeah, it's a cool book. It's I'll just give you the first line of the preface, just tell to kind of give you an indication of how dense it is. To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today is big with blessings.
Ooh,
Yeah.
we'll have
It's
to
a
pick that up.
science and it's not you can see a lot of sort of religious information in it, but it's a science and it's not a religion. There is a religion that is by the same name, but it's a science and anybody can utilize. It's just like gravity. It's like whenever I talk to my clients, it's like, well, is gravity working? Is it still working? Yep, it's still working. It's the same with the law of God. It's still working. You can still trust it.
Yeah, good
So
stuff.
anyway, I digress.
No, it's fascinating. It's your background. It's where you come from. It's
Yeah,
brought you here to the here and now in this
yeah.
present moment. And to this choice matters. Let's talk about that. What do you mean by the name of your company?
Yeah, the story that I told you about my mom and dad and sort of deciding what the healing modality would be, since we had the choice, and we always were given the choice. I mean, my mom sort of took the first aid baton as prayer, but we were always given a choice as kids which way we wanted to go. It was never like you have to go this way. But I always really loved it, so I always chose that. And having the choice in kind of healthcare as a kid made me and everyone, I mean, I would think I was the only one who studied the science when I was growing up in the school and everything, but it was like I was sort of the odd man out when it came to that kind of thing. Kids would come and say, what would you do if you broke your leg? I was like, well, I can tell you what I did.
Yeah.
So there was that place of I'm different from other people, and it gave me a window into being able to choose in every area of my life, not just in healthcare. Was like, well, do I need to accept the limits of anything? Do I need to be limited by age or by size or by race or by ethnicity or economic background? Like, I don't have to be limited by anything. I get to choose myself because I have agency. So at a really young age, I recognized how much I was holding choice for myself and then kind of wielding that sword of choice and not letting other people wield it for me. So I just held myself immune to a lot of things, which, didn't make the adults very happy in my life because I just went my own way and I followed my intuition with everything. I just really tuned into, I guess I grew up, one of the things, there's a definition of angels in that book. Like part of the definition is God's thoughts passing to man, spiritual intuitions, pure and perfect. It's like that spiritual intuitions, pure and perfect. It's like, okay, I'm trusting that before I trust the evidence because
Wow.
I know the evidence doesn't tell me the truth. Like the looking at the x-rays about my leg, it's like that. Yes, that's a sense of it. If you use the five physical senses, that's what the five physical senses tell you. But if you use your spiritual senses, what does that tell you? About your health, about your well-being, about who you are, about your identity. Tells you a different story. So I have the choice. Which one of those bits of evidence am I going to lean on? And then go back to that first line that I just referenced. To those leaning on the sustaining infinite, today's big with blessings. So I'm going to lean on the sustaining infinite. I'm not going to lean on the five physical senses. And yeah, is that challenging? Sure. Because all the five physical sense testimony, the 5D, the 3D, 5S, it's going to tell you, it screams evidence at you, but do you have the strength to say, I know a different story. I know who I am, and I know that my identity, the nature of me, is not material. Like if you think about who you were when you were 5 years old, who you were when you were 10 or 15 or 20, your body There's not one single cell in your body. Every 7 years, it's like completely new cells. So physically, you're not the same person at all. But are you the same person? Yeah. So clearly, our identity is not in our body, not in the physical hunk of matter that's kind of standing here. And when they do experiments with people who are like dual personalities, and one personality has like a mole on their face and one personality doesn't, or one personality wears glasses and the other one doesn't. And then when they shift personalities, their eyes are perfect, the mole disappears. It's like, if that's happening in real time, then why can't we demonstrate that? We can. I mean, the answer is we can, but do we understand that we have that ability to do that? I mean, I'm just like little bitty neophyte in learning the infinite nature of the science, but I love it and I've done it my whole life, and a lot of healings, a lot of stories, lots of really cool growth and breaking through limits and overcoming challenges and all of that good stuff. Anyway, you got to
Wow.
interrupt me because I'll just keep going.
Your story is fascinating. I don't want to interrupt what you're saying because it's all relevant. And I'm just, if I may, just sort of
Yeah,
synopsize what I heard you say is that, growing up in a labeled as a certain religion, and I grew up
yeah,
in a small town, and there were Catholics and Lutherans, but there was also a few Jehovah Witnesses. I remember them being labeled by that. We as children didn't know what that meant, but
yeah,
there was a label, so they were different, right?
yep,
Just because of that, and all it is a label. It's
yeah,
a man-made label. But what a gift that you were able to know what a lot of us know now, way back when you were a child. And
yeah.
so interesting that you were focused on the doorknob.
I know. Like,
Got in the doorknob, but it's a 3-year-old mind. So it was a way for you to grasp the whole concept of God being everywhere, including in an object that just happened to be at your eye level, probably.
yeah, no, I remember looking up at it. So I was even shorter than the doorknob. So I was pretty young. But it's like what if we're looking at something that looks solid and it's actually an idea?
Mhm.
It's a solid idea. Like, what is that? It's like, what does that mean? Because we're so used to looking at matter and thinking of it as this solid thing. But if there is no matter, like there, if you look at the micro like quantum level of stuff, there's nothing there.
Yeah.
It's all consciousness. So what is this stuff? So it's fascinating. And this is like, you look at sort of the world through the quantum lens, and then go up another level and look at it through the divine lens. And that's like it's like beyond quantum. So we're like, the world is catching up and we're kind of at the quantum level now with sort of mainstream thought. But this is like the next level beyond that, like instantaneous healing, like Jesus did, or the woman who wrote that book did. I mean, she had tons of healings.
There's so
So
many documented stories of people that
yeah.
left their bodies, their souls, their higher self, their essence has left their bodies and then been revived and come back. But
Yeah, like Anita Morjani,
so
who
many,
went out of her body, stage 4 cancer, and knew like she knew who she was. She knew she was healed. She went back into her body and said, "Hey, doctors, I'm healed." And they said, "Oh, sorry, honey, you're not. You're on your way out." She said, "No, I'm healed." And she was like, she knew because she'd seen it all. And then, like a couple weeks later, she's out of the hospital. And now she's traveling the world, talking about it. And she was not religious at all. So she's actually a really fascinating story, I think. It's somebody who saw her true nature, her true identity, and knew it so clearly that the body had to conform to that. It had to. It has no. It's like we don't realize that the body is not the boss of us. We are the boss of it, and
mm,
we get to tell it what it's doing. And so much of the kind of medical approach is to examine the body and to see what's going on. It's like, it's backwards. It's like we got to be examining thought and see that the body is reflecting what's going on in thought. So you want to shift the body, shift the thought. So it's like that thing. Was it Wayne Dyer? You want to change the things you look at, change the way you look at things. and the things that you look at change. So I think that was Wayne Dyer.
Very Wayne Dyer.
Yeah, very Wayne Dyer.
And all of
He
this
had
is
something there.
Joe Dispenza is lurking in this room
Yeah,
too. Yeah,
yeah.
talking a lot about this stuff now. So this is a current topic. It to some of you, this is probably new, and you're like, what are they talking about? It is a topic that is out there. People are understanding it more and accepting that this is science. This is reality. And I think there's a line in science where it's like quantum science and then just like basic science that we grew up with. And my dad was a science teacher, so that's a whole different thing.
Oh, that's cool.
But the reality is everything is energy. We are all energy, and we are all connected because we're all the same. We really are. And that's the basic getting down to the atom science of it. So I could talk to you about this forever and learn from you. I'm going to, by the way, so you're never getting rid of me now. So
Yay. I'm glad. We're bonded.
awesome. Okay, so a question that I have for you is that I really wanted to ask you is, are there things that we can do to cultivate our intuition? And you've been working on this all your life.
Oh,
Give us some
yeah.
ideas.
Well, I'm a huge, huge proponent of a daily practice. And what I mean by that is there's a phrase or methodology that I use that makes it really, really simple, and that's look up, look in, look out. So looking up is essentially looking up to the higher power. What is that power that is larger than us? It's like we don't grow our fingernails and grow our hair. We didn't create our body. Like, what is the power that is larger than us? Whatever you call that. I happen to call it God, but plug in whatever's comfortable for you. So look up and recognize that there is a power larger than us. Look in and acknowledge that you are the creation of that higher power, that you are that. If you call the higher power mind, all intelligent mind, then you are mind's idea. You're the idea of mind. And so looking in and identifying yourself in alignment with that, because we have a lot of thoughts that sort of race through our head, and they're not who we are. We latch onto them as though they're us, and that the sort of little ego likes to think that that's us, but that's not who we are. We're not our thoughts. So when we identify ourselves in alignment with the all that is, it's a different kind of identification than identifying ourselves with what the little ego would say we are. And being in the practice of that is part of the daily practice. And then you look out on the world and your experience and your relationships and all the stuff out there. Most people kind of look out and scan the world and their experience, the externals, and then decide how they're feeling. And then if they get in really bad trouble, then they'll look up and go, oh, God, help me.
Mm-hmm.
But the daily practice that really sets you up to tune into that still small voice, that inner voice, that the voice that guides us, kind of that spiritual GPS that we all have, it's built into who we are. And it's like batteries included. When you showed up, it's part of who you are. So everybody has intuition. Everybody has that spiritual GPS. But if the small ego is chattering all the time and we're tuning into that, like that's who we are, we're not going to be hearing it. So setting up your day so that you're tuned in, it's like tuning the radio every morning to the station that you want to listen to. Are you listening to that little ego, or are you listening to that higher voice? So the daily practice for me has always been about that, about looking up, establishing higher power. What is that? And establishing myself in terms of that, and then going out and reflecting that into the world so that I'm standing on that platform of authority and wholeness and integrity, and that who I am is based on a divine source. It's not based on the story that the small ego would try to tell me based on the evidence.
Wow.
And it's a very different way of approaching life. Then you don't get kind of buffeted by all the stuff that's happening. You can stand your ground, and you can choose, kind of getting back to the choice thing, you can choose how you're going to respond. Are you going to let every thought that comes up to you, every thought of fear, every thought of competition, every thought of like I'm getting hooked by this or I'm triggered by that, am I going to let every thought that comes up actually have me react to it, or am I going to choose and say, yeah, I see you, fear, but I'm choosing not to take that on. That's not, it's a nice suggestion, but no, thank you. And walk through life with that sense of dominion because you're aligned with a divine power that's more powerful than anything you're going to see on the physical plane of things. And it gives you this different level of calm and assuredness and an ability to navigate tuning into that still small voice, those angel messages, the little shoulder taps, go this way, go that way. So I've been doing a practice, I think since like I was 11 or 12, seventh grade, however old you are there. I started in seventh grade. My mom one day just said, I know you're really interested in God and stuff. So here, why don't you just sit down for 5 minutes and read this Bible lesson before you go off to school? So that first day I thought, oh, okay, that's cool. She showed me how to kind of look stuff up. And I think at that point I would just open the book at random. So I sat on the edge of my bed for 5 minutes and just read, oh, cool. And like got an idea and I went off to school. And the first day I did that, seventh grade, you remember seventh grade when everything is awkward and you feel like you're tripping over your own feet and saying all the wrong things, like all that stuff. Like everybody's looking at me. It was like that day was the perfect day. I said all the right things. I ran into all the right people. It was like if reading for 5 minutes gets me this, I'm doing this the rest of my life. And I just started like it was such a stark difference from the day before to that day. I thought, this is like magic. This is cool. So I just started doing that. And it's always, it's morphed and changed as what I do, but it's always been there. There's a download actually. There's a workshop I do called Paths of Practice, and there's a download on my website that it's free that people can just download. It's called, what is it called? It's called like the 3-step solution to any problem, something like that. it's on my, and it's on my website, and it takes you through. It's like the worksheet that goes with that workshop. It takes you through a whole process on how to design your daily practice, and
Wow.
it's all based on look up, look in, look out, and then the questions that I ask myself: who would you have me be? What would you have me know? What would you have me see? What would you have me do? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And to whom? But notice they're like 3 things ahead of what would you have me do? Who would you have me be? What would you have me know? What would you have me see? And then what would you have me do? So it's be, do, have, or be, do, have. It's not have, be, have, do, be.
Yeah. And I feel like up until recently, a lot of us have had that wrong. Have had
Yeah.
order.
A lot of people do. And in all coming from a compassionate place, it's not their fault. It's what the world shoves down your throat from day one. Like, if you want success, you must do this and you got to go. It's like, it's just in our face all the time. This is what success looks like. Really? Money and power is, I don't know. How
I
about good people and character?
Yeah, and it
That's
feels
like,
like being in alignment, like how you set
yeah.
yourself up for your day, the first day of seventh grade, you set yourself up for alignment for that day.
Yeah.
And it was so easy to do. And that quiet confidence, it comes from knowing that you're in
Yeah.
alignment. And I think that's what you're talking about, that quiet confidence.
Yeah, I remember feeling like, school is tough sometimes. And I was definitely kind of the odd duck in a lot of ways. I was in every different group. I was in band and chorus, and I was an athlete, and I was a drama person. It was like I was in every group and I was an academic. So it was like I kind of morphed into everything because I just loved it all. But I was still kind of an outsider. But I do remember that feeling of kind of having a secret inside. Like I could walk around knowing I had a secret. Like I knew myself, and I felt really comfortable and confident in that because I knew myself on a different level.
Yeah.
And it gave me that place of, I guess confidence is the easiest way to describe it, but it was like I was holding a little secret. And it kind of gave me that inner smirk. So I could walk around just feeling not better than anybody, just like, you guys can have this too. Like, this is really cool. But, I was a dork. I would go into the girls' room and say, like, there'd be a little clutch of girls talking about some other girl, like criticizing somebody. And I'd walk in. I was such a snot. I'd walk in and go, wouldn't it be amazing if you could go through the whole day without criticizing anybody and then turn around and walk out? It's like, really, Lisa? You're such an asshole.
So brave.
Like, I was such a snot. Oh, I was a little snot. I didn't, my social skills were not, and I think probably still a lot of times, I think I'm not great at that kind of social stuff. Small talk was never, I was never a fan. I just couldn't do it. It was like, I felt like, oh, this is such a waste of time. I just can't. It drove me crazy. Couldn't do it.
It really is.
And it's a skill you need. So I'm not suggesting that people don't, it's a skill you need, people. So don't do what I did. I'm a good example of what not to do in that regard. Yeah, it's a good skill.
I feel like you were just being true to yourself, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I was, but it did come at a big cost.
Sure. Well,
Yeah,
in high school and junior high, I get that. It's a
yeah.
difficult time, but we are finding ourselves. And yeah, I just feel like you were brave. So
Well, and I was a cheerleader, and I was in every sports thing. I did, just everything. Anyway, I got, when they do the yearbook at the end of the year, the only, because I thought, oh, these are silly. Like, I'm sure I said stupid. Um, these awards are stupid. The only one, if I got one of those awards, the only one I would ever want would be most versatile. What did I get? Most versatile. So I got an award. Like, I don't want prettiest because that's too superficial, and I don't want smartest because that's not blah blah blah. Like, I was a little misjudgy. It's like, okay, like,
still
get off
got
your little high horse, Lisa.
you still got what you put out there.
I did. I
Bottom
did. It's like, and that is another thing. It's like, what you focus on expands. What
line.
you pay attention to grows. It's like law of the universe.
Tell us more about that. What other ways have you used your intuition in your life to create?
Oh, like everything. In what way have I not? My careers, my various careers, every single one of them, every single place I've lived,
Wow.
aside from my home growing up, every single place I've lived, from my first apartment to the house that we have now, every single one. And I have lots of stories about that. My career, every single time I got laid off or transition in career, every single time. My husband, my best friend, my other best friend, like everything, finances, investments.
Are you saying that you used intuition to create, like to
I don't know if I would say create, to be guided, to feel a sense of direction and going forward. Like, I'll give you one example. When I first got out of college, well, when I was in college, I really wanted to work for the radio station in college, and I was shy. I mean, I wasn't. Like, I was very outward, but I was insecure, I guess. And I didn't have any experience. I didn't think I knew music well enough to be a DJ. And so I ended up working as like an assistant in the radio station. And I let fear hold me back. So when I left college, I thought, I am never letting fear govern my decisions again. Like, I refuse. If I'm afraid of something, I'm going towards it. So work as a secretary, I work as a secretary for about a year. It was not a job for me. I bless those for whom being a secretary is their thing. It was not my jam. I was not very good at it. And I was miserable. And I ended up like going out at lunch one time, just in tears, like sobbing, just like you know, sitting at this fountain and just like, okay, God, like, use me. I'm here to serve you. What do you want me to do? Like, use me, use my talents. You've given me talents, use me. And I said, I'll do whatever you say. And I hear this voice, like it was so loud. I turned around. I thought there was somebody behind me. And the voice said, you'll be in Boston for a while. I was like, that's not an answer. What is that? That doesn't tell me a job. Like, what am I supposed to do? And then I stopped myself and I said, no. I said I would listen to whatever you said. That's my answer. It's like, okay. So it's kind of like the look up, like, God, what do you want? Look in. Does this align with me? Does staying in Boston, because I was in Boston at the time, does staying in Boston align with me? Yeah. And then look out. What does that look like? Well, I don't know, I guess I get up from where I am and start walking back to work. Like, demonstrate that that's your answer and you're listening to it. It's like, okay. So I get up from where I am. I walk literally like 20 steps. And my old boss comes out of this building. I run into my old boss. He said, "Where are you these days, Lisa?" I said, "Funny you should ask, John. I just got a really clear sense I'm going to be in Boston for a while." He said, "I'm so glad to hear you say that. Come upstairs. I want to offer you a job."
But
That started my whole career in broadcasting. And it gets better. I get back to my desk, the phone rings, and it's this guy, Dave, in the radio division, the then radio division, radio news service, calling me and saying, "Hey, when you first came here, like a year before, you were interested in TV and we were radio. And I know you're interested in television, but we have somebody going on vacation. Would you want to come down and sub for them for 3 weeks?" Because they were getting married or something. So I called John and I said, "John, I just got a call from Dave. He's offering me a job in radio for 3 weeks. What do I do?" He said, "Don't worry. He's going to find out later today that that whole division is being shut down because this is the new thing that's happening." It was like I basically got the same job offer within minutes of each other after I had gotten up from where I was and listened to that answer, which wasn't a full, like, here's your career, go this way. It was like, you're going to be in Boston for a while.
it's trust.
I was for like another 10 years. And and I got laid off, I don't know, like 5 different times during that 10 years. And every time I did the exact same thing. It's like, okay, I'm here to serve you. Like, I wasn't afraid. I just listened. It's like, I'm here to serve you. What do you want me to do? Guide me. And I would be sitting at my desk and then it's like, get up and go up to the third floor. It's like, okay. So I get up, I go into the elevator and the doors open. And then there's the manager of the publishing society, the head guy. And I have an interchange with him and I say something that tips him off that I'm interested in something. And then I end up like get a call like 2 hours later that, oh, there's this job that we're thinking about for you. It's
Wow.
like that, like stuff like that would just happen over and over again. It was amazing. So that's like my career. And that happened when I started a tutoring business, started working. I started up a thing called the Institute for Spiritual Fitness, which was kind of something I started way back when. And then was just starting that and just had this one of those moments where I was just on the floor of my office and just like reaching out and saying, okay, what's next? I don't know. What do you want me to do? And the phone rings like a minute later. And it's the head of school or this place where I'd been subbing every now and then. He said, "We just had our receptionist walk out the front door and they're not coming back. Can you start full time tomorrow?" And I said, "Well, let me ask. I'll see if it feels right. Let me pray about it." So that started a whole new season of doing stuff. And all of the skills I learned in these various jobs, I'm using all of them now. And that job actually was the one that led up to, I did that almost 20 years. And I kept feeling this pull to do what I came here to do, like to talk about and teach truth and healing. And I I kept feeling like, well, let me try to figure out what that's going to look like. Maybe I can work half time. Like I kept kind of bargaining with the voice. And finally, one day I was just like on the floor, just like, okay, I cry uncle, like what? And it's like, I can't figure this out. I was doing lists of pros and cons.
Yeah.
And I heard a voice again. It's like, you work for me. It's like, and it was really like that. It was like a mafia don voice. It's like, you work for me. Very strong, very masculine. It's like, I said, okay, you figure it out. Because I've been trying to like negotiate. What do I do? It's like, okay, fine. You figure it out. I was being really like bratty. Fine. You figure it out. The next day, I get called into my boss's office and he says, you know, we've been looking at this job. We're going to be shifting things around because I was doing like the work of like 3 different people. And we're going to reorganize this. And the job that you're in right now is actually ending at the end of this month. So you're not going to have a job in 3 weeks. And I went, yes. Okay. So that's when I started my company. So it was like the answered instantly. And I was really happy. He was a little surprised I was so happy. It was like,
I bet he
it's
was.
clear. It's clear which way we're going. Yeah.
Clarity is a gift.
Yeah.
Clarity is a wonderful thing to
Yeah.
receive.
So career has it's been that way like every step of my career. And as an entrepreneur, i I every day I'm like, okay, what do I do now? What do I do now? And I have this I've had a business mentor for a while, and I would try to follow sort of the advice, and then I would get an intuition to go a different way. And this is early on. This was several years ago. And I just started doing things the way that I felt right to do. And then like a year later, her whole guidance changed to what I had been doing, which was it. I thought, oh, that's interesting. And
Mhm.
I don't know if it was just a coincidence, but it was like, oh, that's interesting. I'm just listening to this, and I'm like a year ahead of where I would have been had I followed the original plan.
By now,
Anyway,
you know it's not a coincidence.
no, no, not at all. So,
Definitely. So I was reading through your bio, and one of the titles under Lisa Taylor is author. Talk to us about the.
oh, yeah, well, there's a book of the same title, This Choice Matters. I mean, that's the working title right now. It should come out next spring. That's the plan. I'm just in final edits now, and I should be getting it to the publisher soon. So I have a publishing deal, and it's on the calendar. It's just marching forward. So I have written lots of articles and different things in the past. I actually edited a book at one point on domestic violence way back when. Um, so this is my first official full book being published. So I'm very excited about that.
Congratulations. For one, I'm very excited for your book to come out. And so I'll be watching for This Choice Matters. And stay tuned, everybody, because we're going to be celebrating with Lisa
Thank you. Thank you.
for
I'll
sure.
come back. We'll do a podcast about it. Maybe you'll hear some of the same stories. Well, there are lots of stories in the book. You'll recognize a few in the book.
So I've heard a lot of the positive aspects of working with intuition, and we're only human. And I mean, I know you are too, even though you're amazing and you've been in this world since you were a child. But are there any times where you've bucked your intuition?
Where I've bucked it, um, yes. I'm trying to think, did I buck my intuition that time? There was a I was 15, 14, 15. I don't know, I was pretty young. And I went to live with friends in Colorado. My mom was not real happy, but I said, "Listen, do you trust that I follow God's direction?" And she said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, then trust me." So I went out and lived with this young couple. They were like 21, 22. And I had a job as a stage manager at Colorado College. They thought I was older than I was. I didn't lie about my age, but I'm sure I presented myself as being older than I was. So I wasn't 16, but they still hired me. And when I was in school back home, I worked as a radio reporter, like a high school reporter or school reporter for RKO, for WRKO. So when I was out there in Colorado, I thought, well, I'll look up the local RKO station and just see if I can be a reporter for them. So I went down to meet with this DJ, and I rode my bike there because I'm young, I'm a little teenager kid. Rode my bike down to this radio station, met with this DJ, like did not tell the people I was staying with. I'm sure they were none too pleased. Well, I know they were none too pleased later. They were upset. But by the time we were done with this meeting, it was dark and there was no way I was going to ride the bike home. Well, my intuition is saying, don't get in the car with this guy. You don't know this guy. Like, don't do it. And I overrode my intuition and got myself into a situation that wasn't great. He said he needed to make a few stops on the way to dropping me off. Well, one of the stops he made was with a bunch of friends and they were drinking. And I overheard him talking about this, and I stayed in the car because I was too freaked out about this kid he had in the car and he had to drop him off. And I honestly, I just started praying. It was like, I know that I am safe in the divine sense of the word, and I need that to be the case here. And as I'm praying, I'm overhearing them talking, and he just completely does a 180 and he goes, why don't I just go drop her off and I'll come back? So it was like, so he ended up dropping me off and it was fine. I mean, there have been a couple of times, and I guess that was just, I don't know if you call that intuition, but I got myself out of it by following what I always follow.
Yes, it's a
So I overrode the intuition, getting into it, and then I used the intuition to get out of it.
yes.
So
You asked for help.
yeah,
That's
yeah,
wonderful. Wow. And just the knowing that that help was available to you.
yeah. And
Very
if we know
powerful.
there's one mind, and we're all expressions of one mind, there's no it's kind of that false ego combat inside there. Like the house divided can't stand. So if there's one mind, then everything is in balance, but we need to see it that way. If we see the conflict, we're going to experience conflict. Whatever we're believing, we're going to experience that. So if we believe in what the evidence is telling us in this plane, we're going to experience the pain and the suffering and the disjointedness and all the stuff, the, disconnect. If we really understand what's true, our experience is going to reflect that more and more. So it's helpful. It's really helpful. It makes for an easier existence.
Wonderful. I just think that is a wonderful message that you're putting out there, is that you will create a beautiful reality if you believe that that's your reality. And that
It
is,
is it is your reality if you are willing to choose it. Like that's already the reality. And the reason it looks like it's less than that is because we believe it's less than that. So if you take away the false belief, what you're left with is the reality. Like good is all, and the sense of things being really bad and buying into that and latching onto that makes our experience look like that. So if we get rid of those false beliefs, the limiting beliefs, and we see the reality, we see more and more of what's true, what's already present. It's like the kingdom of heaven is at hand, the kingdom of heaven is within, that whole, it's like it's already here. So all we have to do is see it. All we have to do is choose it.
choose it.
And sometimes that's challenging. That's not always easy.
So
Sometimes it's really challenging.
it is challenging. It's especially if it's new to some of us. And so,
Yeah.
what can we do? Do you have any programs that we can follow? Do you have coaching that you do, or how
Yeah. I mean,
to work with
I
you?
I do a daily show called Morning Metaphys, and that's just like a little subscription. There's a free trial. So if you go to thischoicematters.co, you can sign up for like a free week and just see if it aligns with you or not. And then I have like a community that's sort of a subscription, and people come. I would say probably less than half the people show up live because it's a lot of different time zones all over the world. So I send out a recording every day. So depending on whether you're available when I do it, you can watch the recording every day or not. So there's that. And then I also do a program, This Choice Matters Community, where people that want to just do a deeper dive on understanding the science and living by these laws. Um, there's it's so inexpensive. It's so inexpensive. And I should probably raise the prices. Like speaking of intuition, like the intuition is saying, Lisa, hello, value this more.
You guys
But
hear this?
so
Jump
yeah,
on
so
now.
dive in now, because if you dive in, the price is fixed. Like whatever price you get when you subscribe, that price is fixed. So if the prices go up, you get to stay there. So yeah, there's high incentive for that. So
Yeah,
when the book comes out, I'm sure things will be jumping up a little bit
yeah.
because my time will be a little bit more limited and
Well, I'm looking
more
forward to
speaking.
The Choice Matters in print. So I'm really
Yeah,
excited for that. Lisa, thank you so much for your time.
yeah, this went by really fast.
It always does when I'm talking with you, and it's so fun to talk to you. I just want to respect your time because I know you have a day and appointments as well. So thank you so much for showing up here today on Authentic Living with Dawn Janice. It is my honor to tell the world about you through this platform. So thank you again for being here with us today,
Thank
Lisa.
you for having me. It's really been a pleasure. I always love talking to you. So to
Same.
be continued.
To be continued. Yes, watch for version 2, everybody, and we'll see you next time on Authentic Living.